Hello, hello everybody. Happy Friday. Melanie here from Mel's Inky Fingers. Welcome. Sorry I'm a bit late today. I feel like technology always has a way to throw your plan off. So I went to go live today and my recording device, it just kicked Facebook off and I had to re-download it. And I thought, I don't have time for this right now. So I redid my setup. And if you do lives, you know how much time it takes to kind of rearrange and switch things up. And so here we are. I'm here. Yay. So thank you for being patient. Let me make sure I'm live in the right place after all of that and make sure that you can hear me. And yep, here we go. Yay. So I think we're good. So when you jump on, say hello, let me know you're here. Hi, Julie, welcome and thanks for joining. So I switched up my recording device and I brought in my computer so I can see your comments. So we're all good now. So when you jump on, say hello, let me know you're here. I am so excited about the projects I have to share with you today. You're going to love them. This suite is beautiful and I have been enjoying creating with it. I'm hosting my Christmas Super Saturday tomorrow here live with my friends and team and customers who will be coming to create with me for the day tomorrow. And we are going to be working with this suite to make a sampler that is beautiful. And it inspired me to make the projects that we're going to make today. And I just kind of went with the same color scheme and same idea. So you want to see what we're going to make today? A bridge fold card. And look at this card. I love them. They're so cute. So I am glad you're here so I can share with you how I did these. So let's talk a little bit about this product suite. So this product suite is in the September to December mini catalog, and it is kind of like a mega suite. So a mega suite is just really amped up. So in this suite, you have 2 stamp and die bundles, and this bundle is incredible because it has a very fancy hybrid embossing folder. And I've showed you these in the past. I'll show you with this one again when we get to this card as long as our time is going. I feel like I always say I'll show you at the end and then I forget. And then I don't show you. So remind me to show you how this embossing folder works because it is super, super cool. And you're going to see it when we make our second project. But you have this really amazing die set that's called the Night Divine dies, and it creates this nativity scene. And the details are just really special on this. I don't know if you can see all the little details that get embossed and cut into your dies as you're creating them, which makes it really easy to kind of step up your project by just adding die cuts, which I absolutely love. And then this die set is paired with this beautiful script font set with some pretty sentiments that coordinate with both stamp sets. Then you have the second bundle, which is called The Stars at Night, and that's where you have this cool hybrid embossing folder that you can use as a regular embossing folder to emboss these really kind of layered detail embossed images on your project, and then some smaller. There's different scale here, and you can use this on your project, or you can pair them with dies. And when you put your paper through, it not only embosses, but it die cuts the shapes. I mean, it's so cool, really slick. And then it's paired with this. So if you love the stars, but you don't want the Christian theme, you don't need it with the Stars at Night bundle. This is just a pretty Christmas set. And if you want to bring in the Christian theme, you can pair it with this Night Divine bundle. And it just really makes stunning projects. Now, the rest of this suite is the paper. There's 2 different papers. You have a specialty paper and a designer series paper. So there's 2 different papers. We're only going to use the Oh Holy Night paper today, but this is beautiful, lots of blues. And what I love about it is the back sides have these incredible patterns, and it works really good for fall creating too. So if you're looking for a pack of paper that will carry you through the holiday season, this one will work because you have these fall-ish patterns, then you have a winter pattern, and then you have these really pretty patterns on the front. So you could get a lot of mileage out of this pack. Then the specialty paper, which I don't use today, they're vanilla and Night of Navy with gold accents. So really pretty, but we're going to save these for another day. Then you have ribbon, which I forgot to grab. But here, I'll show you, because I have my sampler here. I'll give you a little sneak peek. There's the ribbon on the sampler here that people will make at my Christmas Super Saturday, but you can see the ribbon is really pretty. It's a navy organdy ribbon with the gold shimmer on it. Really beautiful. And then, last but not least, we have these really pretty embellishments. These are called the Adhesive XR trinkets now. These are not available anymore. They have sold out, and Stampin' Up! Won't be able to get any more. However, when I was ordering for my product shares, I somehow mistakenly ordered more than I needed. So I have some of these. So I have a special for you today. If you are inspired by my projects today and order either of these bundles or the product suite, I'm going to gift you a pack of these embellishments as my thank you. Then you will have it to create with your projects. So either one of the bundles or both, throw in your designer series paper. I'm going to gift you your embellishments so that you can create with this suite. It's really pretty. You will not regret it. All right. So let's jump in now that you've had a little overview of this suite to see how spectacular it is. Let's start creating. So these projects today, they came together really nicely. They're easier than they look. Hi, Kirsten, how are you? Thanks for joining. So they come together easier than you think they might, and I just really played and had fun making them. Now, when I first saw this Night Divine die set, I thought it would be beautiful to make a card in the shape of this die. So I'm going to show you how I did this card today. It's easier than it looks. And then this is called a bridge fold. And I made this and I really liked it, but I modified it a little bit. So when I show you how to make it today, I'm going to have the modifications in there, and it's going to fix this little challenge here of supporting this stable piece in the fold of your card. But isn't that pretty? And again, like I had mentioned, my sampler inspired me to stay with the same color scheme. And I just left these as silhouette style images with the die cuts, but you could make them any color you want. You could die cut the little camel and then die cut it again and add a little colorful cushion on top and make your animals different colors, and it would be beautiful. So let's start with our bridge fold card. So I have the measurements here for you. These are the modified measurements that I'm going to use. And you're going to want the following supplies. So your card base is Night of Navy, and this is going to be cut 7 inches by 4 1/4. And that's so that when you fold it, it will fit in your envelope so that you can mail it. Then you are going to want whatever designer series paper pattern that you choose from this set. You're going to want a piece that's 6 3/4 by 4. And if you're working with directional paper, you want to make sure that it's cut correctly. So it's 6 3/4 is the width, 4 inches is the height. And all the pieces that you're going to cut this into are going to be 4 inches high, and we're going to cut it across like this so that we have the continuity. See how we have the continuity of the paper on our little nativity scene here? Now I'm using a different pattern from the paper pack so that you can see how that works together. And I think I just realized I think I forgot to cut my bridge. So, oh, I do have a piece of scrap in there just in case I made a mistake. So we're good. And then you're going to want a piece of early espresso or some brown tone to do the little stable, and some black to cut your little people. And then you're going to want a piece of designer series paper that's going to go on your bridge piece. And the bridge piece is going to be Night of Navy as well. And it's going to be 5 and, let's see, since I redesigned this, it's going to be 5 1/2 by like an inch. So we're going to cut a piece 5 1/2 by about an inch, and we'll cover it with our designer series paper. All right. So when we get to the bridge, I'll pull that out. So let's start by creating our card base, and this is going to be scored. So let's take this out, and I have your scores here where you'll want to score this. So we're going to put this in with the 7-inch side along the top, and we're going to score this at 1 inch, and then 1 3/4, and then 5 1/4, and 6. And this will be our card base. Now this is going to allow us to fold this to create that depth to our project that's going to give us this detail, and then we'll put our bridge across the front. So get your bone folder out. Bone folder is super important to getting nice dimensional projects to be square. So I'm going to first fold my ends in on this inside score line. So you fold this in like this, and then we're going to fold it out at the outer score lines. Okay, and now we have our card base that's going to give us this depth. Okay. All right. So now we're going to need our paper trimmer, and we're going to trim our designer series paper so that we can cover our sections of our card base. So our designer series paper is going to be cut 6 3/4 by 4, and then we're going to cut it at these measurements here. Okay, whoops, sorry if you can see that. And I want this to kind of be in continuity, so we're going to cut it 7 1/8. Then we're going to cut a piece that is 3/4 of an inch. These are all in inches. Then we're going to cut a piece that's 3 1/2. Then 3/4 of an inch. And then that should leave us a piece that's 7/8. Close. Okay. That one's going to be a little off. Okay. So now we're going to leave them in this order, and now we're going to adhere them onto our card base. So I'm going to use, let me get this back in view here. So I'm going to use Tombow because I like to be able to kind of slide my pieces into position. So I'm going to start by putting this middle piece in, and it's going to go kind of from edge to edge inside that scored area. Okay. So now we're going to do, let me move this. I'm trying to do this with the trimmer here, but it's really kind of frustrating. So let's just get rid of this and put this here. So now I'm going to add these to my card base. Whoops, I kind of made a mess with the glue a little there. I didn't mean to do that. Okay, and now let's come over and do the same here. And I just like that I can kind of slide these into place, get them exactly where I want them. So the center one, when you cut it, if you've not cut your pieces, cut it just a little shy of 3.5 so that it folds up in there nicely. All right. So now see how we have the continuity of our scene, and now we can just kind of come in and, I should have let it dry. Maybe I do need to leave the spaces. I cut these a little short on my sample. Let me show you. Do you see how I gave myself a border around it? So maybe I shouldn't have tried to make it continuous with the paper. Oh well. I think it's still going to work. I'm just going to trim this one down a little bit. There we go. All right, so now I think this is going to work great. All right. So now we have our card base done, so we can set this aside. So now let's die cut some of our pieces. So we want to start by die cutting our little stable. So let's take those dies out. And we will use several of these pieces. I'm going to die cut this out of my dark brown, and then from our black, I'm pretty much going to die cut one of everything else other than the clouds. So I have the camel, the cow, and the donkey, and a sheep. So I'm going to put these in my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine here. And these are so cute, so very cute. When we have all this detail on our dies, I think it adds so much to our project when you have these die cuts that have all the cute embossed details on them. So look how cute this is. Isn't that cute with the little wood grain patterns? All right. And now let's pop our little animals out. And our little family here. Can you see the details? Isn't that cute? And I love this camel. If you're a Star Wars fan, part of me wonders if you could turn him into a little AT-AT walker. Do I have any Star Wars fans here? Tell me. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but my kids are, and I don't know, I look at these cute legs and I'm like, I wonder what you could do with that. Someone more creative than I could maybe come up with something. All right, so now let's assemble this, because the assembly is really fairly straightforward. So let's come in here with our card base, and we are going to give this another burnish here now that the paper is dry and it's not going to slither away on me like last time. Okay. See how that folded if you just cut it a little shy. So now when we put this in place, we're going to be able to attach it with these little tabs here on the little stable. Instead, I had to retrofit it and use the feet as holders, and you had this little gap here. So I think this is going to work out nicely. All right, so I'm going to put a little Tombow here on just the edges of the stable. You can see how I just put a little tiny bit, and I'm going to slide this down because I don't want it to stick up above the top of this card base, or it's not going to fit in my envelope. Actually, I think I need to bring it down just a bit more. And then I'll just hold that until that glue sets. Okay. And now let's make our little bridge for the bottom. So I'm going to cut a 1-inch piece of cardstock. And I'm just going to adhere this in place. And let's see, and it needs to be about 5.5 inches long. So let's put some adhesive on the back. So you want to make sure that your adhesive is just on the ends, because if it's not, and you fold your card, it may stick closed. Okay. So now I'm going to take a piece of designer series paper, and I'm going to adhere that along the bottom here. And I used a piece that went with the designer series paper that I already had chosen for the rest of the card. So this one, I used the desert scene and I cut a piece that went with the paper. And this one is more like the little town. So this is the bottom that I cut off that, and I'm just going to adhere that in place. And I'm putting it right along the top so that you don't have a border on this bridge piece, just like I did with the rest of it. So it stays in just the designer series paper. That makes sense? So just like I didn't have a space around the edges. So on this one, I cut my strips, and I cut my strips 1/4 inch narrower than the sections of the card base. And I decided I wanted to hide those. So I cut my paper so that it covered all the sections. Now let's adhere these little legs down. And you just need a tiny, tiny bit of this glue. You don't need much of it. It's paper, it's not heavy, so it doesn't need a lot of support. Just a tiny bit does it. All right, so now that we have those down, we can flip this over and we can trim this off. And there we go. Isn't that cute? Oh, Julie said her grandson is a Star Wars buff. All right, so here we go. So now we just need to take our little silhouette pieces and we can start building our little scene. So I'm going to put a little bit of Tombow on the back of this. And again, you don't want a lot because if you put a lot on here, it'll ooze out of the little die cut details that are put in here. So you could either put it here or inside. I'm going to put mine inside. Just make sure it's straight. Okay. And now you can arrange the rest of these on the outside wherever you want. Okay. So however you want it. I kind of like the leg covering the edge of the stable there. So there we go. And I started to put some adhesive on the head and then realized I couldn't because when this closes, it's going to be flat like this. And you don't want that head to get stuck on the inside of your card. And then the rest of these can go wherever you would like them. So I'll put a little donkey. He's super cute. And a sheep. And a cow. I have glue on my fingers, so everything wants to stick. All right. And then last but not least, we can add our sentiment and some of the pretty little stars. So let's take a piece of designer series paper that coordinates. So this is just a piece, kind of coordinates, and you want it to be a little bit lighter so that you can actually see the stamping on it. And we are going to stamp our sentiment in Night of Navy ink. And I wanted to mix it up a little bit. And you could do Celebrate the Magic of the Season. Actually, I'm going to do Celebrate the Season. So here we go. So we're going to do on the back end of your pad where you don't have much case, I'm just going to ink up part of this very linear sentiment. So this sentiment comes from the Stars at Night, and it says celebrating the magic of the season. They're just a little smaller so it doesn't kind of overwhelm the rest of your card. So I'm just going to stamp that and then clean my stamp so that I don't get any shadowing, and then turn it around and ink the rest of it. So Magic of the Season. And then I'm just going to line it up underneath here. And then I can trim that and add it to my card. So let's take out my little trimmer here. And I'm going to kind of trim it close. Now remember, your ink will take just a tad bit more time to dry on the designer series paper than your cardstock. This does not have a coating on it, so you don't need much extra time, but I would give it just like an extra second or two. All right, and then I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive here and add my sentiment. Isn't that cute? So, so cute. All right, and last but not least, I'm going to add some of these beautiful star trinkets. And I'm just going to kind of sprinkle these around on the inside, some of the big ones, some of the little ones, so that you can kind of see them through. And maybe one more. I'll put 5. So there we go. What do you think? Isn't that neat and easy? Oops, I bumped this and now it's crooked, isn't it? There we go. So here are 2 different patterns. It's called the bridge fold. All right, so now let's move on to our second project, which is this card that is made in the shape of the stable. Okay. So to create this project, you're going to want a standard card base of early espresso. It's 8.5 by 5.5 scored at 4 1/4. You're going to want a scrap of basic black, large enough to cut this die. And then you are going to want a piece of designer series paper and a piece of window sheet cut 3 1/4 by 3 1/2. And then a piece of white and a scrap of, this is distressed gold specialty paper I'm going to cut the star with. And then I'm going to die cut this using our adhesive sheet so that it stays nice and clean looking on the inside. All right, so let's get started. So let's start by die cutting our family. This die here. So I'm going to take our window sheet. Now this is a sheet of adhesive, and it's going to apply the adhesive to your cardstock so that when you die cut it, you're essentially creating a sticker. And I'm just going to put this down on my cardstock like this. And then you flip it over onto the cardstock side and you die cut your die. So let's do that. And then now what you have is you're going to have your die. Carefully pop this out. And you can see how you have the release paper on the back. When you lift this release paper, you have like a sticker, like a cardstock sticker. And it works really nicely for using detailed die pieces on your projects. But in this case, I want it to stay nice and clean on the inside. So I'm going to use it so that I don't have adhesive marks showing through my window sheet. All right. So now next, let's make our card base. So we are going to make a card base using this. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to set this down on my card, and I'm going to put the edge of the die ever so slightly beyond the fold of my card base. Do you see how I have this sticking to the left just a little bit? Because I don't want it to cut the fold line there. I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. And now here is our card base. So you can see how the rest of this will just come off, and pop it out carefully. I cut through 2 layers, and for some reason this didn't totally cut right up here, so that's okay. We'll just take our scissors. If your plate has a lot of cut marks on it, sometimes it doesn't want to do the second layer cleanly, and that's fine. So we can just take this and cut it. Sometimes it needs just the tiniest bit of help. Okay. Now we're going to save this because we're going to use one of these to support the back of our card. The rest of this can just be disposed of, okay? Now, these I'm going to leave in place on the back. It didn't cut all the way through, and that's the way I wanted it, so that you have that detail on the inside. All right, so now we are going to take our our window sheet, and we are going to put the tiniest bit of Tombow right on this inside edge, right along the edge of the die cut, the tiniest bit, okay, and then up here. You don't want a lot because you don't want it to ooze out and be a mess. But we're going to take our window sheet now and drop that into place, just like this. And we'll just give that a moment to dry. And then this is going to be put in the same way. But before we put this in, I'm going to do some heat embossing. I'm going to emboss my sentiment on this piece. And for this card, I chose the big full one that says, "He shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God," and so forth. So this one, I'm going to use "The Lord is my shepherd." It's a little smaller and will take up less space. So it will give you 2 different looks at the same card, just so you can see some variety. So I'm going to use my Embossing Editions set here, which is my tray and my little tweezers here and my anti-static tool. You definitely, this is dark paper and we're embossing in white, so you definitely want to rub this with your embossing tool. This is going to help your embossing powder not stick where you don't want it. So I'm going to emboss this in white, and I've taken my white embossing powder and I put it in these little containers. It makes it a little easier. So let's stamp this. The Lord is my shepherd here. And then let's add I always cover my pad before I do anything with my powder, because I once wound up with powder all over my pad and had to replace it. All right, so we're just making sure that we cover this really nicely with our white embossing powder. Okay, and now we're going to heat emboss this. So I'm going to use my heat tool. It's going to get a little loud here, and I'm going to melt this and you can watch, okay? So it's starting to melt now. You may not be able to see that very well. All right. So now that we have that we can add this to the inside of our card, and we're going to add it the same way. So I'm just going to add the tiniest bit of our Tombow adhesive right along this edge. You could also use a fine tip glue pen. That would be great. And when you heat emboss on designer series paper, it does make the paper get a little tiny bit wavy. So we have a way to fix that. So I'm going to kind of line this up in the same place. You see how it's just a little bit wavy? But you can see now when we close this, we have our sentiment is kind of centered right in there. It's really, really cute. All right, so let's flip this to the back. And remember I said we were going to use this piece. We will cut this here from our card project. I'm just trimming off the edges so that what we're left with is this main piece. And I'm going to adhere it back in place on the back of our card. And it's just going to give the card some stability because the designer series paper is not as heavy as our cardstock is, and it will help it flatten out so it doesn't have that wavy feel to it. But I also want a place to be able to add a sentiment because little note, because you can't really on the inside of this. I suppose you could use a white pen and write on there, but this is going to be easier. So let me show you what I did there. So I took a white piece of basic white, and I'm just going to die cut it again with my stable die. So now I have the same shape. And again, I'm going to just kind of trim off the bottom to keep it neat. You could skip adding this back in, but I just liked the stability that it gave. And then you get this little edge down here that just kind of keeps it clean. I just kind of like having the finished look. So I'm just going to adhere that right over the top. Okay. And now I'm looking for my Night of Navy ink pad. Here it is. Now I'm going to add my sentiment. And so for this, I went again with the sentiment out of the Stars at Night, and I'm going to add this Merry Christmas. But you could do Wishing You the Best and Bright. You could do any of the sentiments here, would be really pretty. So you have the Lord is my shepherd. You could add the stars are brightly shining. The stars are brightly shining. That would be really cute on there. And I'm just going to go with Merry Christmas. Okay. So now let's turn our attention back to the front of this, and we're going to finish this by adding our little family. So all I need to do is lift the release paper and you can see how now there's adhesive all over the back of this. You see how there's adhesive there? So now you can just set it in place. Now remember, you want your edge not to extend below your window sheet or else it's going to stick. So I'm just putting this just above the edge of my window sheet and then pressing it in place. And it gives you a nice clean look on the inside. And now let's do our star. So the star is going to finish this off. So I'm going to use my hybrid embossing folder and the coordinating dies from the Stars at Night bundle. So let's talk a little bit about this. So here is what it looks like if you just run a piece of paper through the embossing folder. It's really quite pretty. You could add that to your projects, but it's also fancy. So you can put this in your embossing folder with the die. Let me get the die out. It kind of drops in. You can kind of feel where it falls. And it kind of sits in there really nice. And then, oh good, I was hoping it'd be big enough. And then you just close it, and let me show you the magic. So I ran this through like a regular embossing folder, and what you get are these 3 embossed stars. Whoops. Aren't they pretty? And now you could make them in different colors. You could layer them. It just makes beautiful, beautiful. You could layer them like this or keep them separate. So I'm going to make a star out of the distressed gold specialty paper, which is so pretty. So I'm just going to set this over here. Now you could also stamp. I can show you that as well when we're done here. Because you could also stamp your stars and then die cut them and emboss them all at the same time. So please remind me to show you that. All right, I'll just set this here. And we'll add this pretty detail. Okay, so I'm going to do this by putting a little strip. I just want a little strip to hold everything in place. I have a piece of Simply Elegant trim, the gold cord here, and I'm going to create a double bow and just kind of set it behind here. So I'm just looping it back on itself a couple of times. And just want to make sure I made it wide enough, and I did. So I'm just going to set this here. You could put a glue dot there to hold it in place if you wanted. I'm just going to put this little strip of foam and then put my star down. Now this is raised on the back, so I don't know if you can see, if you just add some adhesive to the center of this, it may not stick down really well because it's not making contact with your paper. Ooh, and I should side this up a little bit so it doesn't cover too much of my sentiment. And then trim this one as long. And then last but not least, I'm going to put a beautiful star trinket in the center. Now again, these are no longer available from Stampin' Up, but I goofed when I ordered everything for my product shares. I ordered several extra packs by accident, and so lucky you, now I have them and I can gift them to you. So if you choose to get a bundle from this suite and some designer series paper, I will gift them to you. And here is your card. So here's two different versions. What do you think? Isn't that fun? So we have our Nativity card and we have our bridge fold card. Isn't this sweet pretty? I love it. All right, so I promised I would share this, so let's do that. Before we end, let me show you how you can stamp your star and die cut it and emboss it. So this star here works with the biggest center part of this die. So I'm going to show you how cool it is to actually stamp it and then die cut it and emboss it all at once. So I have the stamp, and let's do this in Night of Navy ink. I'll ink this up and stamp it on my cardstock. I wish I had something lighter so it showed up a little better, but I think you'll still get the basic idea here. So then drop your die into the embossing folder until you feel it fall into place. And then I put my paper in, and then you hold it and flip it over, and then you adjust it so that you can see your, this is dark on dark, it's a little tricky. I think I'm seeing it. And then I just close it without letting go, all right? And then once you do that, you can run it through your embossing folder so that it will emboss and die cut for you. And look how amazing that is. Isn't that beautiful? Hopefully you can see that. So you have a stamped image that you now emboss and die cut all at once, and then you can add that to your project. So these hybrid embossing folders are pretty spectacular, and that again goes with the Stars at Night bundle. So yeah, that's what I have for you today. So thanks everyone for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the projects. I don't know if you have a preference, if you have one that you like more than the other, but let me know what you think. All right. Have a great week, everyone, and I will look forward to seeing everyone next week. I hope you have a wonderful holiday and get to spend time with some family and friends, and don't eat too much. All right. Bye.